The Pikmin franchise is probably one of the most notable underdogs of Nintendo's IPs. They may have a bit of a cult following, but that cult is small, and though many people may have heard the name Pikmin, many may have simply never given it a chance. So here's 10 reasons why you should play Pikmin. It is an outstandingly original franchise. It conglomerates a completely new gameplay experience compared to all other games I can think of, with its feature of using an army of up to 100 to complete tasks, with subsections of the group being visually separated through color aesthetics as well as mechanic-based elemental variations. The home they inhabit is gigantic, yet familiar, invoking a new sense of exploration to see what's new and what can be recognized, be it weatherly seasons or simple household items or food. And while the gameplay aspect of a time limit is not overtly new in the video game media, Pikmin brings a strong new dynamic to the real-time strategy genre as a whole. There's less of a main rival to defeat in each given level, but rather an open level area for you to open up more and explore slowly over time, with your growing familiarity of the new environment allowing you to expand into new territory to explore even more, or to grow your army up further. Pikmin games stand out in an amazing way such that their format is seen in no other replicas. It is that original. The music in the Pikmin games are absolutely fantastic for the most part, but don't believe Super Smash Bros. The music featured in the Super Smash Bros. Games are for the most part unfitting, sticking to a kind of docile nature feel rather than the imaginative, open exploration and danger sense that the games actually provide. Sure, many tracks do have a simple ambient nature sense to them, but the Pikmin soundtrack is not a simple microphone placed in a forest. We often have loud, dramatic orchestral pieces, large and powerful for the giant enemies you face, and it constantly blips and changes depending on how you play. Some tracks will be intrinsically linked to the enemy itself, building to a climactic moment of dread when the enemy lashes out, before returning to a more standoffish tone. When carrying items back with your squad, the music changes to be more dainty, like you're pluckily succeeding on your mission. On days where it's raining, the music dampens down, bringing a more chill sense to the day as the weather reflects it. Even simple acts like switching who you play as affect the music in ways of rhythm, and when gathered in certain numbers, the Pikmin themselves will sing to you. The music in the Pikmin franchise can add tension or fear if it wanted to, or remains to be chill if it wants to do that instead. It perfectly encapsulates both a relaxing adventure with the dramatic dangers of such a journey all at once, and you control it all, one way or another. Within the Pikmin franchise, there is an immense sense of variety as well. While the location of the Pikmin games itself is somewhat recognizable as the planet of Earth, it continues to be vastly different to what we know. There are no appearances of humans, but their existence is implied. The Pikmin themselves come in a variety of forms through colors of their skin, elemental strengths and weaknesses, and the physical traits present on their body, from hardiness to additional wings. And the enemies they fight seem to have endless possibilities, with ladybird chickens, armed flies, gun-toting spiders, simple blobs, walking land, and bee orchestras, just to name a few. They can range from somewhat familiar with little additions to vastly new and creative, and each creature can be expanded for additional uses later on in the same or future games. Variety also exists in the obstacles the players face, with non-natural elements like pop pieces, bridge shards and scales, as well as more fitting assets such as propulsion geysers, icy slides, bouncy mushrooms. And each enemy and obstacle can be hosted in an array of location options, with notable locations including birdhouses, giant trees, abandoned toy rooms, Christmas decorations, and general caves or places that are predominantly underwater. And with so many variable aspects of a single Pikmin level, there are infinite choices and challenges for players to face with each new level, sub-level, or challenge mission. The level of detail within the Pikmin games is phenomenal, whether it be in the form of Oliver's notes at the end of each day, giving us an insight on the inner workings of our otherwise silent protagonist, learning his dreams and imaginations and the people he's connected to, or just things like the extensive lore of each individual creature in the game, discussing their behaviors during the winter, their family relations to other creatures on the planet, or simply the best way to cook them up. This can also be turned over to the variety of items collected as well, learning the unusual perspectives of people who don't understand the purpose of the item, or discovering where it can be used in the future. There's also the hidden pieces of detail leading to fan theories such as why the Geiger counter pinging in most areas seem to suggest an explanation for why there are no longer humans and the creatures have such odd forms, to how simply a blob or two could be a recurring creature with connections to an old Japanese folklore. There's also the less important details such as events being documented into the environment, or the improvements of programming linking to the relationship and growing success of the Pikmin and Olimar as a team, as well as how the planet changes and evolves over time, or discovering how each relative of the playable characters react and develop during your adventure on the Pikmin planet. As you can see by this over-the-top yet still somewhat vague list, there's a lot of small details put into this game to sink your teeth into. Though more of a theoretical aspect, there's also the undertone of a genuinely dark story, or at least the Pikmin games are not simply the all light-hearted colourful game that it appears to be on the surface. Though the starting point obviously links to the Japanese dark folklore tangent and its appearance and reappearance through each of the Pikmin games suggesting a larger arc across the story, there's also the fact that there are genuinely bad endings and multiple possibilities in almost every game. The choices and efficiency of the player have a real effect on the story and the final outcome of the playable captains and the Pikmin they command. And though it requires a bit of digging, it is entirely possible to see the dark and unforgiving nature of the Pikmin games, both through simple mechanics like leaving Pikmin behind, as well as the real and final deaths of characters or entire planets. Replayability is probably one of Pikmin's absolutely strongest features. With Pikmin 1, there is a strong arcade feel to its gameplay approach, with your improvements as a captain improving the ending at the end of the game, whilst on a smaller scale, day-to-day improvements in speed efficiency create an easier game for you to complete as you progress. Continuing into Pikmin 2, the randomized aspects of the underground caves gives you a completely new experience each time you play, as well as brings new approaches to creatures depending on the path they are placed. There's also the extensively detailed challenge mode providing more content for potential hours. Pikmin 3's replayable days and classical arcade feel alongside the boosted challenge mode further increase the runtime of the overall game, with Bingo Battle and 2-player battle mode adding infinite playtime due to the variety of each co-op game. It is very much a replayable franchise. Surprisingly to some, Pikmin is difficult. In the first game, this is especially true. You can fail, and you probably will. There are 3 endings provided, and you need to be damn fast for the good ending. Pikmin 2 grants a chiller approach, opening the audience to a nicer game, but at the same time it introduces the Gatling Groink, the Man at Legs, and the Water Wraith, giving a less challenged objective overall, but a much more brutal time on a day-to-day scale. Pikmin 3 has both the crazy bosses designed to scatter your squad and wreak havoc, and the challenge mode intensive, pushing your limits of what can be done in a certain amount of time. As for Hey Pikmin, which I haven't mentioned directly up to this point, I guess there's that giant bird creature. The characters in the Pikmin franchise are internal, but deep. Olimar especially is opened up through those end-of-day notes, telling us his thoughts on his family and where he feels placed in this world. Louis, on the other hand, is crazy but mysterious. Though we don't hear much from him, his actions tell us much more about his intentions and thought processes. The boss side character shows us a separate and unseen adventure arc during our story, one-dimensional in motives but explorative in action. This can also go for the relatives of the playable characters. And the co-pilots, though relatively formulaic, are believable to a degree, with the relationships between each other being a stronger focus point. These character elements only add to the experience of the games and isn't a habilitating factor of the story. They simply benefit the audience that desire it, but do not hamper the audience who do not. It's a character expansion element that bends to the will of the player. And there is real atmosphere in places. Sure, it is for the most part placed in nice and natural locations, but the game is dipped in tension. It is a gruesome game of survival, with mandatory evils required to pass and defeat for success. Pikmin 1 adds time tension, requiring 25 ship parts to succeed and allowing minimal room for mistakes. Enemies are less forgiving and losses feel heavy. Pikmin 2 introduces caves, giving out outright darker atmospheres, hazards galore, and crazier varieties of enemies. And Pikmin 3, though less focused on such tensions, do include it with the build-up areas before the bosses and desperate moments in the story arc. And of course, for all three games, there's the tension of the countdown timer and the cruel end-of-day sequence. Finally, it's the Underdog series. So much so that even Nintendo seems to be shooting it down. It's marketed completely incorrectly, presented as a simple, nice game leaning on the cute factor but treating Pikmin appearances more like a cameo feature rather than building on it more. The shorts add a little more character to them, but otherwise, in most promotional material, they're just there doing. Pikmin games are chill, they are good for unwinding, they use nice colourful aesthetics and they are easy to understand, but they're mind-testing enough to keep attention, and they're underlaid with a darker lore and challenge that Nintendo doesn't really like to show off. It's no Mario, but it's fully original, with a deep, strong protagonist despite the silence. There's tons of imagination and variety in all forms, with an expansive element with each edition. It has its darker tones additive to the overall experience, with a rich sense of detail in ways of enemy descriptions and behaviours, treasure lore, understandings, future applications, and alternative perceptions and interpretations of household items. It is immensely replayable for hours of additive content beyond the simple one-track story, with alternative modes and new different attempts with each run, both on a major and macro level, and within are real challenges and trials unrepresented in all marketing attempts from Nintendo, but tense for the players that just give it a chance. It is basically everything missing from Hey Pikmin, which, can I just remind you, has less tension, minimal depth unless paid for, little challenge of what is really acceptable, a lack of unique gameplay or replayability, no alternative modes, music, or any detail beyond the one-track story. It is a formula of a game and isn't a Pikmin game. It's a game with Pikmin. The Pikmin franchise is criminally underrated, underappreciated, and incorrectly marketed. Designed for and with a dedicated audience of an explorative survival nature, and marketed towards a non-gamer looking for something pretty, it balances well with inviting and welcoming, with investing and gripping, but drops the ball on what it focuses on, between the level designer and the marketing director. Pikmin is at a loss, both on representation and simple presentation. It is a variety piece with a ton of variety, ticking all the boxes for many different types of gamers, but shown off to a select few in such a narrow-minded way. The possibilities of the Pikmin franchise can go far. It has spread in multiple directions, in ways of gameplay possibilities with the Pikmin, enemy types, hazard forms, and area locations, and mechanics, both external and internal. It can grow in ways of new dynamics, though attempted with Hey Pikmin could continue like Mario Maker. It can develop more into the characters already introduced, or reimburse into characters new or long forgotten and unexplored. It can follow a simple story with the background beneficial element of natural logic, or character development, or deep dark secrets, or it could just stay formulaic. Wherever it goes next, whatever form it takes, we, the small few crew in the Pikmin fanbase, will be here. We are the marketing team for Pikmin now, because no one else seemed to have stepped up to the task anymore. As the Pikmin franchise does or does not expand further in whichever direction Nintendo throws next, we too as a fanbase will expand as well. Whilst many people may see Pikmin as basic and boring, simple and of little priority, I say these are the perfectly valid reasons for why Pikmin as a whole is criminally underrated, underrepresented, and actually pretty damn good, and it's why you should give it a chance. But I've said my bit. All that can be done now is for you to help as well. This video was intended for an audience less focused on the Pikmin franchise beforehand. For the majority of fans, Nintendo and not so much, this was a cry for a game that hasn't really got a captain of its own, or at least has been missing for quite a while now. Give Pikmin a chance. It's a real goldmine of a franchise. Just gotta take that small step onto the new unknown planet. And if you are here without having much knowledge of the Pikmin franchise, do be sure to check out all my other videos because there's tons of Pikmin content there, both speculative and analytical. Have you ever noticed how every single review of a Pikmin game by someone who hadn't played a Pikmin game before that always ends up saying surprisingly? Look around for some and listen out, almost all of them will say, Pikmin surprised me, it was surprisingly good, it's surprisingly dark. It's a running theme that the Pikmin games aren't marketed like they're actually experienced. Everyone is always surprisingly delighted to see it. So hopefully you will be too soon. My name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.